As Derek arrives at his bar job after a long shift, the usual mundane routine of locking up and heading home, he notices something peculiar about the back door. The door, which he always leaves slightly ajar for late customers, is now open 2 inches more than it should be. He tries to shrug off the unusual sight, attributing it to the constant wind from the alleyway. Despite his attempts to ignore the oddity, Derek finds himself increasingly on edge as he makes his rounds inside the dimly lit bar. The silence proves deafening in the empty space, and the shadows seem to be closing in on him with each passing minute. He hurries through his tasks, eager to leave this unsettling place behind. As he finishes his final checks and grabs his coat from the back room, Derek pauses for a moment of respite and takes a long swig of whiskey from the bottle stashed in his pocket. The familiar burn soothes him briefly, but then his eyes drift toward the door once again. It's still open more than usual, its frame barely visible against the dark canvas of night. Derek shakes off the growing unease and steps out into the alleyway, pulling the door closed behind him with a bit too much force. He strides down the narrow passage, hugging his coat around himself against the chill. The dampness in the air seems to cling to his skin like an unwanted embrace, and he quickens his pace. As he turns the corner onto the main street, Derek's breath catches in his throat. There, standing tall and unyielding at the entrance of the bar, is Madame Sealers. Her usual black dress billows in a non-existent breeze, her ink-stained fingers tapping against the tarnished silver handle of her umbrella. Her eyes, gold, glowing like embers in the darkness, lock onto Derek's with an intensity that he can almost feel in his bones. He freezes, rooted to the spot as she takes a single step forward. "Evening, boy," she purrs, her tone devoid of its usual warmth. The sound seems to echo in the empty street, bouncing off the brick walls and seeping into Derek's very core. With no idea what else to do, he nods stiffly and starts to back away slowly. "Evening, Madame Sealers," he croaks out, his voice barely more than a whisper in the eerie stillness of the night. She smiles then, but it doesn't reach her eyes. They stay fixed on him, unwavering in their focus, as she raises her umbrella and steps aside, revealing someone, or something, standing behind her. It takes Derek a moment to process what he's seeing, his mind refusing to accept the impossible sight before him. There, framed by Madame Sealers like some cruel joke, stands the Fey Queen herself. Her body is that of a young woman, but her face gleams with a beauty that seems almost too perfect, almost inhuman, to be true. A crown made of live moths adorns her brow, and they flutter out around her head like a shimmering shroud as she laughs. A cold, cruel sound that sends chills down Derek's spine. It's then that he realizes his mistake. The door had been open not just 2 inches more than usual, but it had never been closed at all. It wasn't wind swirling in the alleyway. It was magic, her magic, that held the barrier between worlds slightly ajar for her arrival. The crown of moths around the Queen's head seems to shimmer and shift, as if alive, drawing Derek's gaze like a magnet. He tries to tear his eyes away, but it feels as though invisible hands are pulling them tighter, closer, into that swirling vortex of wings and light. "Welcome home, brother," the Queen coos softly, her voice dripping with honeyed venom. "I've been waiting for you." Derek's heart nearly stops in his chest. No one knows about this job, not even my mother or sister. How does she know where I am? Madame Sealers moves closer, stepping around the Queen to stand at Derek's side like a shield. Her eyes are pools of liquid gold in the darkness, watching him, waiting for his cue. "What do you want?" he croaks out, forcing himself to meet her gaze. The Queen's smile falters for a moment at the hatred that pours off him like waves. "Ah, but I already have what I desire," she purrs, swirling around him in a mock dance. "A drink, an unobtrusive place to rest after my travels and my favorite brother-in-law." Derek feels his skin prickle with unease at her words. Brother-in-law. The Queen seems to notice his confusion and chuckles, a sound like breaking glass. "Poor thing," she says with a tut-tut of her stained lips, "still so naive after all these years. I suppose you haven't heard. Our beloved sister made me king, ruler over the shadowed realms, upon our last reunion." She laughs again, setting off another wave of moths from her crown. Derek flinches as they flutter around his face. But we're not here to speak of family feuds, are we? Madame Sealers cuts in sharply, shooting her sister a warning glare. We're here for the Silver King's blood. The what? Derek blurts out before he can stop himself, the Queen's words finally penetrating the fog in his mind. There is little time for pleasantries, Madame Sealers says, moving closer to him with unnerving speed, her umbrella raised like a spear aimed at his chest. You know why you're here, Silver King. The rules are simple. Fight my sister for your right to breathe our air, or be cast back to the shadows from whence you came. Derek swallows hard, trying to wrap his mind around this new reality. He's not just some cryptid hunter tracking myths. He's the Silver King, a god. The Queen circles him lazily, one sharp nail teasing down his jacket sleeve. A pity he has no power left in that silver sword of yours, she muses. I'd hate for my dress to be stained with your blood. Sister, enough, Sealers snaps sharply, and the Queen sighs and steps back. Very well. Let's see if you've learned nothing from all our time together after all these centuries. Come, boy, give us a show. With that, she lunges forward in a blinding swirl of skirts and moths, silver sword drawn with speed belying her age. Derek barely has time to bring his own blade up in defense before they're crashing together in a shower of sparks. Madame Sealers moves to flank him, but he's learned enough about her magic to use his whiskey bottle as an improvised shield when she tries to paralyze his limbs with a flick of her fingers. Their battle becomes a frenzied dance of steel and spellfire, the air crackling with power around them. Derek fights like a cornered rat, driven by pure survival instinct. But the Queen seems barely winded, easily deflecting his blows or catching them between her own blade and her crown to shatter against the ground. She's fast, almost too fast for him to see, let alone strike back at. Suddenly, she drops her guard and laughs, a cruel mocking sound. Derek sees his chance and lunges forward, putting all his strength into one final blow. His sword passes straight through her middle, sinking deep into her chest with a sickening squelch. The Queen looks down at it in shock, then slowly up at him. You, she whispers, eyes wide with realization. You poisoned the whiskey. And with that, she crumples to the ground around his blade, silver crown, rolling from her head, and bouncing once on the hard floor before lying still by her face. For a moment, there is only silence in the alleyway. Then Madame Sealers sighs heavily and lowers her umbrella. Well done, she says, sounding almost bored. I suppose the others will be along soon to collect her body. You can help yourself to any baubles from around her neck. Younger brothers are so keen to show off their wealth. Derek stares at her dumbly, sword still in his hand and Queen's blood dripping slowly from it. Get rid of the moths, won't you? She adds with a wave of one black-clad arm. They're not safe to leave wandering around. I'll clean up this mess. And with that, Madame Sealers turns on her heel and strides back into the shadows between worlds from whence she came, leaving Derek alone in growing pools of red and silver on the dirty alley floor. The Queen's laughter echoes around the alley as Derek presses his advantage, swinging wildly with his now free sword. He manages to catch her side, opening up a shallow gash that sprays dark blood across his face in a warm, sticky rain. The Queen staggers back a step, her eyes flashing anger for the first time. You want me now, do you? She snaps, voice dripping venom. You think your pitiful silver sword can take me? You are mistaken. She lunges forward with impossible speed, her blade piercing through his coat and jabbing deep into his side like a hot poker. Derek grunts in pain, his vision blurring around the edges as the poison courses through his system. He staggers, losing his grip on the sword which tumbles from his fingers and clatters to the ground. The Queen kicks it away, her foot coming down on the bottle with a sharp crack of glass and an explosion of amber liquid across the dirty cement floor. She circles around Derek's slumping form, her eyes bright with cruel glee. You poisoned yourself, she croons softly, to trap me, and you think your sacrifices will avail against my power. She raises one hand towards his face, invisible fingers pinching and twisting at something just below the skin of his jawline. Derek feels a sharp pressure building like a balloon filling with water. His mouth opens wide in a silent scream as he's lifted off his feet by the strangling force. When it's done, she drops him unceremoniously back to the ground, where he collapses like a puppet whose strings have been cut. He lies still and gasping, one hand pressed to his torn side, trying vainly to hold together the pulpy ruin of his lung. The Queen stoops over him, her lips brushing close to his ear as she whispers something in a language lost since time out of mind. "What did she say?" Derek croaks out finally, forcing himself up onto one elbow and looking up at her with pain-clouded eyes. The Queen leans down closer, still until her silver crown brushes against the rough wool of his coat collar. For a moment, there is only the sound of their ragged breathing. "Come now," she whispers finally. "You should know, being what you are yourself," I said. "Thank you, pretty boy." She helps him up to his feet, then steps back and does something unseen with her fingers. Derek feels the poison draining away like a sinking ship's water, the silver sword weighing heavy in his grip once more. "We'll see how this ends soon," she promises him with a smile that makes even her moths flutter deeper into sheltering hiding. "Be ready, for I will play your song." With those mocking parts, she strides back towards the shadows between worlds, leaving Derek alone in the alleyway. He looks down at his hands and sees them steady again, no longer shaking. With an effort of will, he raises the silver sword once more to its rest against his hip, though it's a slow dance now that one half don't know the steps nor want to play. There is blood on his clothes in several places as he walks back out into the real world. The door behind him doesn't make a sound as it swings closed, but then it never did. Not ever.